At a Texas auction, Caterpillar should have had an easy win. A 1995 Cat 320B, old paint, old cab, old hour meter, sold for $35,000. Sitting near it, a brand new 320GC sold for $55,000. On paper, the new Cat should have crushed it. The antagonist was not Komatsu, Hitachi, or Volvo. It was the new Cat itself, modern complexity. But the men bidding on that yellow iron were not buying calendar years. They were buying usable hours, and they knew exactly which machine would let them keep more of them. For decades, Caterpillar had the cleanest resale story in heavy equipment. You paid more on the front end, but you got more back when the machine left your yard. That was the deal. A Cat dozer, loader, truck, or excavator was not just iron you worked, it was iron you could sell. Banks understood it, fleet managers understood it, auction buyers understood it. A Cat machine with honest hours and a decent service history could walk into an auction yard with confidence that a comparable Komatsu, Hitachi, or Volvo machine usually could not match. That reputation was not built on paint. It was built on a simple bargain between the company and the men who actually had to keep the machines alive. The old Cat was expensive, but it was understandable. The hydraulic systems were serviceable. The engines were familiar. The wiring did not require a laptop just to figure out whether a sensor was lying. When something failed on a vintage Cat, the owner could usually get a mechanic, a manual, and a part. That sounds ordinary until you compare it with the new Cat reality. The Cat 320B from the mid-1990s is the kind of machine that explains the whole era. It was not delicate. It was not trying to be a computer on tracks. It was built in a time when a good operator could feel a problem before a screen announced it, and a shop foreman could diagnose a lot of failures by sound, pressure, heat, smoke, and experience. Those machines are still actively traded in used markets all over the world, not as museum pieces, but as working excavators. A buyer in Texas sees value in that. So does a buyer in Mexico, Africa, Southeast Asia, or Eastern Europe. A 320B can dig today, sit in a rebuild shop tomorrow, and go back to work next month. That is why the used market kept rewarding Caterpillar for years. The resale market trusted that old Cat machines could be revived. They were not disposable. They were mechanical assets with another life in them. Parts availability helped turn that trust into money. Cat had the dealer network. The aftermarket had depth. Salvage yards understood the product. The parts counter could still matter to an owner who did not want to replace a whole machine because one system went down. Even when the dealer price hurt, the buyer at least knew the part existed, or that somebody could cross it, rebuild it, or find a used one. Then there were the manuals. Caterpillar publishes service manuals through the Service Information System, the SIS, and operators can access that information. For an older machine, that mattered. A mechanic with the SIS, a pressure gauge, a wrench, and patience could keep a Cat alive for decades. The independent mechanic was part of the machine's value. When that mechanic could work, the owner had options. When the owner had options, the auction price stayed strong. That was the legendary Cat resale era. Higher purchase price, stronger used value, better support, broader service knowledge, and a machine that still made sense after the warranty expired. A 320GC starts at approximately $33,000 new at base trim, before configuration, setup, region, attachments, and real buying conditions move the conversation. The company did not just sell machines. It sold confidence that the iron would not strand the owner inside a closed system. Around 2014, the Tier 4 emissions era began phasing in across construction equipment, and the bargain changed. The rules pushed manufacturers toward lower emissions, and the new machines came with more sensors, more software, more aftertreatment, more wiring, and more ways for a normal workday to turn into a dealer service call. Cat did not cause every rule that arrived, but Caterpillar chose how to respond, and the response turned the machines into something many owners never asked for. The DPF became one of the symbols of the change. On paper, the DPF captures soot and burns it off during a regen cycle. In a clean brochure, the system looks reasonable. In the real world, the men in the cab are often working in dust, heat, idle time, short cycles, cold starts, bad fuel situations, and jobs where stopping for a regen cycle is not just annoying, it costs money. DPF regeneration system failures became a documented complaint among modern CAT machine operators because a problem that used to be mechanical was now tied to electronics, software logic, sensors, exhaust temperature, and machine behavior that did not always match the job. A vintage CAT could have problems, and plenty of them were expensive. Nobody who has owned old yellow iron thinks it runs on good intentions. Pumps fail, pins wear, undercarriages eat money, engines smoke, hoses burst on the worst possible afternoon. But those failures lived in a world that owners understood. A hose was a hose. A pump could be tested. An injector could be pulled. A worn bushing did not ask permission from an ECM before a mechanic could touch it. The new CAT introduced a different kind of failure. The ECM became the gatekeeper. Diagnostics that used to belong to the owner started moving behind dealer-only tools, locked software, and procedures that forced the machine back toward the dealer. The operator might know something was wrong. The independent mechanic might know the probable cause. But if the machine wanted a software handshake before it would cooperate, the wrench was no longer enough. That changed the psychology of ownership. A man who owns a machine wants to believe he owns the problem when it breaks. He wants to decide who fixes it, when it gets fixed, and how deep the repair goes. The new CAT told him that ownership had conditions. Subscription telematics added another layer. The machine could report, track, notify, and monitor, but the same connected systems made the iron feel less like a tool and more like a product the company still controlled after the sale. Dealers will tell you modern systems protect engines, reduce emissions, prevent abuse, and improve uptime when everything is maintained properly. Some of that is true. A well-supported, newer CAT on a large fleet program can be productive. A big contractor with dealer priority, trained technicians, and replacement machines can absorb complexity better than a small outfit can. But the resale market is not grading the sales pitch. It is grading risk. The used buyer looks at a modern CAT and sees a machine that can stop for reasons a normal mechanic cannot clear. He sees a DPF problem that may turn into hours of diagnosis. He sees an ECM error that might require a dealer laptop. He sees telematics that may be useful to a fleet office, but useless to the independent owner trying to finish a pond, a trench, a pad, or a road. He sees systems that do not add resale confidence. They subtract it. That is the flip. CAT used to win used value because the old machines were durable and repairable. Modern CAT still has power, comfort, hydraulics, and production. But resale value is not only about what a machine can do on day 1. It is about what a buyer thinks it will cost him on day 2,000. Once buyers started adding complexity risk into the price, the old machines began looking better per hour of useful life. The first reason is simplicity. A pre-Tier 4 CAT engine has fewer failure points between fuel, air, heat, load, and work. It can still be complicated, but it is complicated in a mechanical way, not in a locked diagnostic way. A good mechanic can chase fuel pressure, oil pressure, boost, compression, and hydraulic load without needing permission from a server. That matters more than comfort when the machine is 500 miles from the nearest dealer and the job is losing daylight. The DPF regen cycle is where that difference becomes obvious. On a modern CAT, the machine may need the right temperature, the right duty cycle, the right sensor readings, and the right software decision before the system cleans itself properly. Put that same machine into dusty work, stop-and-go work, or long idle periods, and failures start to stack. A sensor faults. The regen cycle does not complete. The machine derates. The operator loses power at the exact moment the job needs production. Suddenly, a machine that looked newer and safer on paper becomes the one holding up the crew. The old CAT has its own problems, but they are usually honest problems. If it is hot, you check cooling. If it is weak, you check fuel, air, hydraulics, or wear. If it smokes, you know where to start. The owner is not helpless while waiting for a laptop. That is why an older machine with higher hours can sometimes feel less risky than a newer machine with lower hours. The hours are visible. The complexity is hidden. The second reason is serviceability. This is where the independent mechanic becomes the hidden hero of the resale market. An old cat keeps value because more people can fix it. A ranch mechanic, a pipeline mechanic, a mine mechanic, a retired dealer tech, or a rebuild shop owner can all make money keeping that machine alive. The SIS gives access to service information. The parts counter still has a role. The aftermarket can fill gaps. The owner can shop the repair instead of accepting one path. With many modern cat machines, the repair path narrows. The independent mechanic may still handle iron, hydraulics, undercarriage, pins, pumps, and normal wear. But once the problem becomes software, emissions logic, ECM access, or a locked diagnostic function, the owner can lose choice. That lock does not show up in a glossy spec sheet, but it shows up in auction bids. Buyers discount machines that can trap them inside dealer service. A dealer service call changes everything. It is not just the hourly rate. It is the scheduling. It is the travel. It is the downtime. It is the possibility that the first visit only identifies the next visit. If the machine is down during a busy week, the repair bill is only one part of the damage. Lost production, a waiting crew, a rental replacement, and a missed deadline can cost more than the part that failed. The third reason is total cost of ownership. This is the part the auction yard understands better than the brochure. An old machine may need around $3,000 a year in ordinary repairs if it is well bought, well greased, and not abused. Some years will be uglier. A swing motor, pump, or undercarriage can make a grown man quiet. But the owner can plan around mechanical wear. He can buy parts, schedule work, and decide what the repair is worth. A newer machine can push that annual repair exposure closer to $15,000 when DPF regen failures, ECM errors, sensor problems, and dealer service calls start piling up. A dealer truck at $150 per hour minimum does not need many trips before the math turns ugly. Add travel, diagnostics, parts, software procedures, and downtime, and the new CAT Advantage starts leaking cash. This is why the phrase resale value can be misleading. A machine does not hold value because people are nostalgic. It holds value because buyers believe the future hours are affordable. If a 29-year-old 320B sells for $35,000 and a newer 320GC only clears $55,000 in the same auction comparison, the market is not confused. It is pricing fear and freedom. The old machine carries wear. The new machine carries dependency. And if this kind of heavy equipment breakdown helps you read the used market before the salesman reads your wallet, subscribe to Key Soup. This channel follows the money, the machines, and the decisions that decide whether the iron makes profit or drains it. By the time the machines hit the auction yard, the verdict has already been written in repair orders, missed regen cycles, locked fault codes, and phone calls to dealers. The auctioneer is just reading it out loud. That is why mid-1990s CAT 320B machines are still traded globally with serious buyer interest. They are old enough to be simple, common enough to support, and proven enough that buyers know what they are getting. Used CAT 320 series machines reportedly hold 20 to 30% price premiums over comparable Komatsu, Hitachi, or Volvo machines from the same era. That does not mean every CAT beats every competitor in every auction. Condition still matters, hours matter, undercarriage matters, regen matters. A clapped-out CAT is still a clapped-out machine. But when the iron is comparable, the CAT badge on that older machine still commands money because buyers know the support network behind it. The funny part is that this premium was supposed to be a CAT strength across generations. Instead, the premium has split in two. The old CAT gets paid for being repairable. The new CAT gets questioned for being controlled. The same brand now has two reputations living under one yellow paint job. Vintage CAT is trusted because it can be kept alive by the owner and the independent mechanic. Modern CAT is respected for production, but feared for what happens when the electronics decide to stop the day. The rebuild market proves it. Across Texas, Oklahoma, and the Carolinas, Shops have built real businesses around keeping pre-Tier 4 Cat machines alive for another 30 years. These are not boutique collectors polishing old paint for nostalgia. These are working shops with engines on stands, pumps on benches, cylinder heads waiting for machine work, and mechanics who know that older iron still has a customer base with cash in hand. The 3406E engine is the perfect example. Production ended in 1999, but rebuild demand remains active because the engine still has a reputation that the market respects. Trucking, mining, oil field, and heavy equipment people know why that matters. An engine that can be rebuilt, understood, sourced, and put back to work keeps value far beyond its production run. When a power plant becomes rebuildable, culture, not just a part number, it creates a secondary economy that the manufacturer cannot fully control. That secondary economy is where the old cat lives now. A machine comes into a shop, tired, leaking, smoking, or loose. The owner looks at the cost of a new machine, looks at the emission systems, looks at the dealer dependency, and then asks the question that has made rebuilders rich. What would it cost to make this old cat good again? Increasingly, the answer makes sense. Rebuilding old iron is not cheap. Nobody should pretend it is. A serious engine job, hydraulic work, undercarriage, line boring, cab work, and electrical cleanup can eat money fast. But the difference is control. The owner can choose the scope. He can rebuild in stages. He can use a local shop. He can source parts. He can park the machine for a planned rebuild instead of being surprised by a derate during production. That control is worth real money. This is why the auction yard has become a courtroom for the company's strategy. Every bid is testimony. Every old 320B that pulled strong money is a witness saying the same thing. Buyers still love Cat, but they love the version of Cat that let them own the machine after they paid for it. That is the market verdict. When customers actively prefer your older products to your newer products, you do not have a branding problem. You have a strategic problem. A marketing budget can remind people that Caterpillar builds serious machines. It cannot make a locked ECM feel like freedom. It cannot make a DPF failure feel like progress. It cannot make a subscription feel like ownership to a man who already wrote the check. The data is not emotional. It does not care about dealer training videos, corporate promises, or the language in a sales brochure. The data is the auction price, the rebuild queue, the phone calls to independent mechanics, the parts ordered for 20-year-old machines, and the buyers walking past newer iron to bid on older yellow iron. The data is voting against modern Cat, not because the new machines cannot work, but because the old machines give buyers more confidence in the hours ahead. Caterpillar has a hard problem because some of the complexity is forced by regulation, especially emissions rules. The company cannot simply go back to 1995 and pretend the Tier 4 era never happened. But it can decide whether the next generation of Cat machines treats the owner as a partner or a captive customer. That decision will shape brand health more than another touchscreen, another app, or another connected service. The pattern that already played out in Europe is coming home. Operators there dealt earlier and harder with emissions pressure, urban rules, and tight regulatory demands. The used market learned to separate productive machines from owner-friendly machines. American buyers are now doing the same math with larger stakes, bigger distances, and a deeper, independent repair culture. When that culture turns against complexity, it does not turn quietly. Caterpillar can still fix this direction, but not with slogans. The company would need to make modern Cat machines easier to diagnose, easier to repair, easier to own after warranty, and less dependent on dealer-only intervention. The iron itself is not the enemy. The lock is. The customer is not asking for a machine frozen in the past. He is asking for a machine that does not punish him for wanting to keep it alive. That is why the 1995 320B at $35,000 matters. It is not just an old excavator beating age expectations. It is a message from the used market to the company that built it. The best advertisement for Caterpillar may now be a machine Caterpillar no longer makes. Repaired by a mechanic Caterpillar does not control, using a manual the owner can read and parts the owner can actually buy. The yellow iron still has power in the American mind. It still stands for work, weight, dirt, diesel, and men who keep jobs moving when everything else becomes paperwork. But a brand can spend generations earning trust, and one product cycle teaching customers to protect themselves from it. That is what makes this moment so serious. Old CAT machines are selling for more than logic says they should because the logic has changed. The buyer is not paying for age. He is paying for access, repairability, parts, and the right to keep working without asking permission from software. And until modern CAT gives that back, the auction yard will keep saying what the brochure will not. If you want more straight breakdowns of the machines, companies, and decisions shaping heavy equipment, subscribe to Key Soup before the next one drops.